Welcome to Time with Theresa Around the World, bringing you up close and personal conversations with Christian leaders, authors, artists, filmmakers, talents, and celebrities from across the globe. Theresa and her guests are sure to warm your heart and encourage your soul. And now, your host, Theresa Westbrook.
Welcome to the program. We're so honored to have author, TV producer, host Mondo De La Vega with us again. Today, we're going to find out more about Mondo's story, My Crazy Life, which shares how he was rescued from gang life through Christ and encountered his purpose and destiny along the way. Welcome, Mondo.
Thank you for having me back. I'm enjoying my time here with you, and thank you for helping me share about the book. I really believe this book is going to give hope to so many people from so many different walks of life. It's not just a gang member story, it's our story.
Absolutely. It is a book for everyone, Well, Mondo, I'm so excited to pick up your story again from where we left off in episode 1. We left the audience on a cliffhanger. There you were, thinking about getting out of gang life. Now we've got to let them know, yes, you came out of the gang life, and your sister asked you a very important question that started the ball rolling on that. So go ahead and pick it up.
What's so funny is that before that moment took place, there was several moments that were leading up to that place because I wanted to die. I was hoping somebody would kill me. I was hoping that yet death was at the door. Everywhere I went, I got inside of a lowrider, inside of a vehicle, and I was getting ready to go do a hit because I needed to have a promotion in the gang. Believe it or not, gang members are organized. We look chaotic, but we're organized. Everything that you're seeing in the news today, from a mob going into mega stores and stealing, all that is organized. Nothing happens by haphazardous. And yet here I was looking for a promotion, but yet somebody was after me. Somebody was wanting to kill me. Yet this is the wild thing. I was not afraid of dying. I was not afraid of being arrested. I was not afraid of spending the rest of my life in prison. And it's not because I was tough. It's because I was scared. I was scared of being loved. I was scared to find happiness. I was scared on what life may look like outside of the identity that I had built. And the gangs were so good at building an identity that I had to learn how to protect it, how to live up to it. But at the same time, that identity was getting exhausting. And a lot of you may be watching me and saying, wait a minute, I have built myself an identity that I can't keep up with. Some of you, I have to ask you this question. If people knew the real you, would they still consider you their boss? If people knew the real you, would they still consider you the pastor? Would they still consider you the person they think about you being, yet you get exhausted trying to protect something that you were never meant to be? And that began to happen to me, that I began to get exhausted because life was all about survival. Life was all about going on a fast pace. It was never about money. It was never about the drugs. Listen, life in the streets were so good. It was an amazing time. It was an incredible time, but yet it was also a heartbreaking time. I always tell people this: if crime didn't pay, then why would we stay in it? Crime was paying off pretty well. But at the same time, there was no satisfaction. Nothing was satisfying me. Nothing was making any sense. I knew that death was around the corner. And when my sister walked into my life and she said, what if God is real? What if prayer works? And what if you have a different destiny? That one hit me the most because every single day society was telling me, lock them up and throw the key away. Or my homeboys were reminding me, don't make plans past 18 years old because you're not going to live that long. When you're giving that ultimatum, you realize I'm not going to live long. Why should I even care? Does anybody even care about me? Did my father even care about me? My anger towards my father became an obsession that everywhere I went, I used it as an excuse to get even with what he did to me. So many people are carrying a pain from their father, from their mother, or someone that caused them a trauma that you can no longer identify with normal people because you don't feel good enough. I didn't feel good enough to even be sitting with you right now. I only felt good enough to sit around and have conversations with drug addicts and mobsters and pimps and players and gangsters. And I was so devalued that I didn't feel good enough. I didn't even feel worthy enough to be around anymore. Yet when my sister came in and gave me those 3 powerful statements, it changed my life forever, because it was the beginning to say, maybe I do have a destiny. Well, what does that look like? Maybe God does exist. If he does exist, then I got a few things I need to talk to him about, because my life hasn't been fair. I don't understand what happened. What did I do so wrong to deserve all this? All these questions. Yet my sister invited me to this church service, and I told her I can't go to church because I have a reputation to protect. Yet my sister said, please promise me you will go. I detailed in my book how getting to the church almost cost me my life. Then by the time I got to the church, I thought my sister had set me up, because I didn't see her anywhere. All I saw was gang members on one side and gang members on the other side. And I'm thinking my sister set me up to be killed. Yet the difference was these gang members had their hands raised and they were worshiping God and they were crying. And I'm thinking, well, what's going on over here? Then the guy that was supposed to give the message was an ex-gang member that was at one time one of my former rival members. And I'm thinking my sister set me up. I don't want to tell the whole story of what happened, but the next day, I had to make peace with my life. A lot of you have made church and Sunday school a playing ground. But when it's life and death, you look at it from a different perspective. The proximity where I was now was life and death once again. Yet the difference was the night before, I had experienced a powerful presence of God that I had never felt in my life. And it was so real that it gave me the courage and the tenacity to walk back into my gang and said, I'm done. It's over. I can't live like this anymore. You know what it takes to walk away from a gang? It takes a miracle. Well, thank God that God is a God of miracles. I showed up the next day with a gun in my forehead, a gun in my chest, and a shotgun in my back. And they asked me, where were you last night? Give an account, where were you last night? Because something happened the night before that I was with my friends inside of a vehicle, but something inside of me told me to leave that car and fulfill the promise I had made my sister. I never even thought about 1 second what happened to my friends that were in that car. Yet, I didn't realize what happened, that they had been set up. Yet, I'm free and I'm giving my face to my homeboys, but I was being addressed with guns waiting to be killed. I got to tell you something. The night before, if I would have died, I would have died in my sin. Yet, I had made things right with God the night before. And I said, God, if I'm dead right now at this very moment, I'm okay, because I had made peace with you. I surrender my life with you. And God, from this moment on, if this guy's killed me, all I know is that I made peace with you. But I want to tell you something. It didn't stop there. This guy's became, you have to read the story. Listen, this is what I want you to do. I want you to go to my website, themondoshow.com. I want a signed copy. I'm going to sign a copy for you. And I want you to read this story. You are not going to believe the miracle after miracle, how God's hands had been in my life. And I believe that as you read my story, you're going to start remembering that you too should have been dead a long time ago. Yet God had a plan for your life.
Yes, awesome. Well, and I would just tag on to that and encourage all chaplains in that speak to youth and people who are incarcerated and celebrate freedom, and Sunday school teachers and school teachers. I can't think of anyone or any platform that this book could not be a blessing to. So I just want to tag on and encourage everyone to do that. And Mondo, I just couldn't help when I was reading the book and you were talking about you felt like your sister set you up. I started laughing. I found humor in that. I thought, I could see this gang member getting paranoid. What happened? Because you couldn't trust anybody.
No.
My sister set me up. What's going on? This preacher, he's coming right at me. What is going on? So I found a lot of humor, believe it or not, even in such a difficult story.
I was standing at the back of the church with 2 9mm Berettas, 2 guns in my waist. And I was waiting for one of them to pop out of nowhere. And my first reaction was to shoot. Yet the gospel that was being preached at that moment disarmed the panic mode that I was carrying. I had no peace because at any moment I was waiting for this to take place, for them either to kill me or I was going to retaliate back. Because in the gangs, there's 3 R's that we live up to: retaliation, respect, and if I tell you the third one, you're not going to want to read the book. But listen, I want you to get the book, themondoshow.com. Let me sign you a copy. Let me dedicate a copy to someone that you love. Maybe it's yourself. But just like Miss Theresa just said, this book is going to give you an insight on not only a gang member's life, but your life. Because I think at one point we all get afraid. We all feel like someone is trying to set us up. But what if you're being set up for the right thing? What if you're being set up for the right season in your life? I was afraid. I was petrified. I couldn't trust anybody. Yet I was getting exhausted every single day trying to keep up with the image that the gangs have given me to live up for. And I want to tell you something. God's plan for your life is not to fail you. God's plan for your life is for you to succeed. It's for you to find peace. It's for you to find God's will, so you can understand why you had to go through what you had to go through in order to be where you are right now.
Yes, that's so good, Mondo. Well, your mother shows up again in the story, and I want you to share how God strategically positioned her, and that led to connecting you with Pastors Tommy and Matthew Barnett of the Dream Center. You've left the gang life. You've given your heart to the Lord, but you were struggling, trying to find your way, trying to find a job. And your mother, tell us about that.
Listen, praying mothers don't give up. My mother never gave up on me. She was frustrated with me. We lived in the same household, yet my mother never gave up on me. She continued to believe. And my mother found her way back to church. She began to pray. She got a steady job. And I tell people this: when you start finding stability in your life, you will begin God moving in your life. It doesn't mean that God doesn't move when you're not stable, but it means that God is a God of order. We have lived our life in chaos, and my mother found stability in a job that she was doing, and she found Pastor Matthew and Tommy Barnett, the founders of the Dream Centers in Los Angeles, California, befriended them and told them that I needed help. Can you believe that? My mother telling them that I needed help. Yet the last thing I wanted was a church to be involved in my life because, again, the church had failed me. But yet at the same time, God doesn't give up on the church. And maybe you're watching this, maybe you're listening to this and you feel like church failed you, but God hasn't failed you. The church is made up of broken people, messed up people, just like you and I. So don't write the church off, because there's some great people in the church. And 2 of the great people that I met was Pastor Tommy and Matthew Barnett, that believed in me and saw that I had something great in me. They just couldn't understand it, but they gave me a place to live and a place to serve the community. The difficult part was that the community that the Dream Center was located in was in the middle of one of the most rival gangs that I had warfare with back in the gang days. How am I going to explain to them that I'm not there to cause riots? I'm not there to recruit them. I'm not there as an insider. I was just there to try to find God's will, but yet God in his mercy gave me favor with the leader of that gang, And I want to tell you something. You got to read the story how that happens, because what the enemy means for evil, God means for good.
Yes, absolutely. And I was even thinking, Mondo, your book could have been called A Journey of Miracles in a Gangster's Life, because it is one miracle after another. And I'm thinking, hey, Lord, I think I'm a little short over here on my miracles, but I'm rejoicing with you that you got all those miracles. So, okay, you're at the Dream Center now, and tell us a little bit about what life was like for you there.
You know, I began to serve the community. I began to serve people. I went out and just do outreach. I think I became, in order to understand what was happening to me, I needed to be around people that were mentoring me and discipling me. A lot of people don't understand that the development stage is discipleship moment in that season in my life. And I was serving the community. I was being a part of different ministries while trying to figure out what is it that God had called me to do, right? And in the middle of all that, God brings Pastor Tommy and Matthew Barnett, and they give me an assignment. That assignment was to drive their guests around, people that were coming in to speak on Sunday mornings and Thursday nights, some mega preachers, some not well-known preachers. But, you know, I was being in charge. I was put in charge of driving the guests around. And one of those guests that happened to come in to speak at the Dream Center was a very famous person by the name of Jim Bakker. I had no idea who Jim Bakker was. And I write about, there's a chapter in the book called Who is Jim Bakker? Because while the world knew who Jim Bakker was, I had no idea who Jim Bakker was. Yet Jim and I became instant friends, and it changed the trajectory of my life. I became one of Jim's sons later in life. I became one of his, executives, co-host of the show. But it happened because I learned to serve the community and understand that we were all broken people serving under one roof and giving back to the community.
Yes, it's a beautiful story. I know more of the story than the audience knows, but I'm encouraging the audience to really get to know that story. So at the Dream Center, you eventually find more than a mentor.
Yeah.
You find your spiritual father, handpicked by God, Jim Bakker.
Yeah.
Please share more of this beautiful story with our audience.
You know, what's so powerful is that God will always give you a decision to make, a choice to make. And the choice is, do you want to forgive, or do you want to keep living in the stage of unforgiveness? I think God knew that I needed to learn how to forgive my father. I needed to forgive my mother. I needed to learn to forgive myself and those people that hurt me. Here, a man by the name of Jim Bakker that had been hurt by people that he trusted, yet he was able to practice forgiveness. As Jim and I became friends and developed a friendship, Jim became an open book to me because he became someone that I needed in my life, someone that I needed to be real with me. Jim became someone that explained what true forgiveness meant. And when he explained to me what the Bible said about forgiveness and how we needed to forgive in order to understand what that meant, I had to see it for myself. You know, I talk about how Jim was an open book, but Jim was so real. Jim never defended himself about what happened in his life. He always would say, you know what, I was wrong in so many areas. I started asking Jim about what happened in his life. And Jim was so honest about it that it became part of my healing. But it was a process to watch how Jim Bakker was also healed as he served the community without even knowing 1 ounce of the culture. And as I watched Jim serve the community, I saw him come back to life. Jim was a man that was rejected by the church, was rejected by society, was rejected more than most people even express or even go through in life. Yet, Jim had hope. Jim felt like God can restore him back to life. And I understood that in order to do that, we needed one another. How can an ex-gang member be linked with a former televangelist that had been one of the pioneers of Christian television and come together and become more, not just friends, but he became a father to me, became a spiritual father to me. And 26 years later, we have started a beautiful television ministry, the PTL Network, that is aired all over the world. I'm co-hosting the Jim Baker Show. I have my own show, the Mondo Show, on the PTL Network. Well, I tell you where it began. It began by understanding how to forgive from your heart. And God used Jim's life to teach me about the power of forgiveness. Through that, I was able to find a way to forgive my father, a way to learn to forgive myself. But I needed to know that in order to function in God's will, I needed to have an intimate relationship with Jesus Christ. Jim taught me how to find a way to develop an intimate relationship with Jesus Christ.
Yes, that's awesome. And I'm also going to say that I'm a regular viewer of Voice of the Prophet and Praise the Lord, and also the Mondo Show, and I enjoy them all. And I have several others. I love Daystar. I love several other networks. But what I want to say about Voice of the Prophets and Praise the Lord Network and your show too, Mondo, is you get information there that you're not going to get other places, that is very relevant to the day that we're living in today and preparedness. But I'm going to move on back to your story, but I just had to share that with our listeners and our viewers right now.
I love that.
And so that is such a beautiful story. You each of you coming from different walks of life and different pain, where God put you together to help one another and to help bring healing to one another, and then bonded you with a tight bond. You are like such as their adopted son as well. So it is a beautiful story, and I just love it so much. And it's a story, that story too, Mondo, just that part of the story really needs to be heard by the world, because there's so many who's struggling today with father wounds and unforgiveness. Would you share some words that could lead people to peace, healing, and freedom?
Absolutely.
And then go ahead and take some time to pray with them.
You know, one of the first things is to understand that you can't fix the past. You can't fix what happened to you. And the hardest thing is to accept that you've been wounded, that you've been hurt by people that you trusted, people that you love. Maybe someone took advantage of you. Maybe someone that you trusted took so much advantage of you that they didn't leave anything behind to even understand what happened. Maybe there's things that happened in your life that got out of control. People took advantage of, maybe physically, spiritually, and even abused you. And how do you respond to that? I want to tell you that forgiveness is the key, not for them, but for you. The forgiveness, unforgiveness, someone said it years ago, it's like drinking poison hoping the other person dies. That's what unforgiveness does. But true forgiveness gives you the dignity back. It gives you what God wants you to have, which is restoration, is peace of mind, peace in your heart, knowing that it's okay to be broken. What united Jim and I was our brokenness. We had two different pasts, two different generations, two different cultures. But what united us was that he was broken, I was broken, and two broken people came together and found that in helping one another, we found healing. What if your healing is in helping someone else? What if your healing and your restoration is getting the focus out of your own problem and helping someone else that is going through the same thing? Through that came healing. Through that process, I found that I can love again. I fell in love with my wife, and my wife and I ended up having a boy and a girl twin. And I want to tell you something. I had lost hope in marriage. I never wanted to be a father. And maybe you lost hope in marriage. Maybe you lost hope in being a father or a mother. I want to tell you something, that what if I tell you that the beginning could be learning how to forgive those that hurt you? Father, I pray for that person listening and watching right now that is struggling to find forgiveness. that is struggling because they just want to get even, that is hard to let go. How can I forget what they did? How can I forgive them? Why not? Why wouldn't you want to forgive them? Not for their sake, but for your sake, so you can be free. So you can be free and think again and have peace again. Nothing can buy your peace. Not even unforgiveness can buy your peace. Not even getting even can find your peace. Listen, in my book, I detail how I wanted to get even with my father. And I talk about it in my book, how I thought that by pulling the gun out of my father and hoping that I can catch up to him and kill him for what he did in the past, I thought that was going to bring peace. Yet I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. And if you had an opportunity to get even with those that hurt you, I can tell you that's not it. What's it is that if you surrender that part of what your pain is to Christ, and you surrender your life and you surrender your heart to him, you will know that the Prince of Peace is him. And that when you give it all to him and accept that you've been accepted for who you are, I can tell you that's the first step of finding true forgiveness.
Yes, that's beautiful, Mondo. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I'll just add to the listeners and viewers, unforgiveness is too heavy of a burden for you to carry, whether you're unforgiving yourself or someone else. It's too heavy of a burden. And the quicker that you realize that and turn it over to God and release it, the quicker you're going to feel better. Now, wouldn't you love to feel better?
Yeah.
It'll be a great feeling. You will actually feel it lift off of your shoulders. So Mondo and I encourage you to do that today. So Mondo, my goodness, I've truly loved your book, My Crazy Life. I know we couldn't get to everything that we needed to get to, but I'm sure our viewers and listeners are going to want a copy. So where can they purchase your book?
Listen, I want you to go. I want to sign a copy to you. I want you to visit themondoshow.com and let me dedicate it to you, or if you want to dedicate it to someone else that you want to give this book to, just visit my website, themondoshow.com, and let me sign a copy to you. I write in the back of my book, if Jesus can change the life of a gangster, what can he do with you?
Amen. Thank you so much, friend, for coming and sharing with us. And you know what, Mondo? Just like back in 2019, I knew you had a book and a great story that needed to be heard around the world. I know that God has some more great things in store for you. And we're so thankful you came to share and bless us today on the program.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for calling me your friend. I take that as an honor.
God bless you, Mondo.
God bless you.
Well, friends, I know this program has stirred your faith to reach out and establish a deeper relationship with Father God. Oh, how he loves you. Take his hand and let him lead the way on your life's journey. Believe in his word, which says in Jeremiah 29:11 that God has a good plan for you to give you a hope and a good future. Thanks for watching. God bless and keep you is our prayer.
Thanks for joining us. To find out more about Theresa and where the Time with Theresa Around the World TV and radio podcasts are streaming, visit TheresaWestbrook.com. For prayer, guests, and sponsorship opportunities, contact Theresa today. We look forward to hearing from you.